Okay, like I said, my name is Mario Sanchez. I run training here at Sumo Logic, and my goal today is to provide you some basic understanding of the Sumo Logic service and really how it can help you uncover events that are difficult to do with your simple greps or your searches that you might be doing now. So in terms of agenda, the idea is that at the completion of this webinar, you'll be able to understand the data collection. You notice that this is an admin topic, so we're not going to deep dive into it, but I'll talk a little more about this in just a second. What we're going to be focusing mainly is on how to search, how to parse, and how to analyze your data. And then we're going to switch over and start talking about how to visualize and monitor your data, meaning how to create dashboards, how to create alerts, and I'm going to talk about out-of-the-box content that we have. We have a full library of apps that you can take advantage of right away. So before I go any further, let me just talk a little bit about what this session is. So you've signed up for this one called Sumo Logic QuickStart. Note that Sumo Logic QuickStart is one of 3 different sessions. If you're an administrator and you need to set up Sumo, meaning you need to get your data ingested into Sumo Logic, get set up with your data collection. You're going to be looking at the different deployment options. You're going to want to look at optimization tools. Then make sure you sign up for this session coming up on January 25th. This is specifically for admins. Shortly after, we'll have a video here for you to be able to watch as well. Today, what we're going to be doing is, this is an intro course. We're going to talk about a lot of the capabilities, what you can do with Sumo Logic. And for most of you, that might be enough. You'll be able to take this knowledge and run with it. If you want a little more detail, if you want a lot of the how-to and exactly how to do it, we're going to be running this other session called Using Sumo Logic. Again, it's for everybody. This one's a little longer. It's 3 hours instead of just 1 hour. So here you'll see the capabilities. Here we're going to dig deeper, and you're actually going to see how to do it as well. So if you want to dig deeper, feel free to join any of these upcoming sessions as well. All right, so having said that, today we're going to focus mainly on the 30,000 foot view and start diving into the specifics. So for those of you who are new to it, what is Sumo Logic? In short, it's a tool that is going to help you gain insights into your growing pool of data within your complex environment. And for most of our customers, they actually hit 1, if not 2 or 3 of these use cases. For the DevOps world, Sumo Logic allows your DevOps teams to monitor your KPIs and focus on delivering quality software and less time on troubleshooting. So we make the troubleshooting a lot easier for that matter. For the IT ops world, we help your team extract valuable information such as latencies or performance metrics, perhaps some trends, or any critical event that is tied to your core system. And then from a compliance and security perspective, Sumo Logic is a tool that helps your organizations really simplify and automate the compliance and security monitoring across your entire stack. And we do this using predictive analytics. So we'll look at some of the examples of this. All right, so what data can I ingest into Sumo Logic? In reality, you can ingest just about any source that you can imagine, whether it's structured or unstructured data. And this slide is just showing you some of the devices or applications or frameworks that you might already be using. And all of these generate logs or metrics that we can ingest and analyze into Sumo. The left-hand side can represent your technology stack, from your network to your virtual environment, your databases, all the way to your custom application code. And the right-hand side could be your infrastructure as well. So we've actually, tidbit of information, we've hired quite a few people from these different organizations just to grow our expertise in these areas. So let me start with high-level data flow. There's 3 main areas to Sumo Logic. One is, how do we get the data into Sumo? This is the data collection. We won't be talking too much about this. As a matter of fact, this is what we cover in that first session that I talked about. If you remember, this one, setting up Sumo Logic. It's more of an administrative function, but we will cover it at a high level today. So data collection, but then this is where we're going to be spending most of our time. You get the data into Sumo, and you want to start searching and analyzing that data. What operators are available to you? How do you chart that data? How do you find trends over time? How do you identify anomalies in here? So that's what we're going to be showing you capabilities today. And then we're also going to jump into, great, now that I've created my queries, How do I drop them into dashboards so I can share them with other people? How can I start alerting myself or my team about critical events that are happening? So most of our time is going to be spent on 2 and 3. Having said that, let me walk you briefly through data collection itself. So this here is a typical customer, a typical Sumo Logic customer. Notice that they have a combination of what we call an installed collector. This is a small agent that sits in your on your host. Um, or you could also have what we call a hosted collector. In this case, the collector sits in the Sumo Logic cloud, and there is some custom script in host C that does an HTTP post over to that collector. It could be a curl script or whatever you want to just do a post over to that collector. But this looks pretty much like a typical customer. I've chosen web servers in here just to as an example. This one has Apache Access. Host B also has Apache Access, and host C has IIS logs that it's sending over to Sumo. Now, the great thing for you to know is that every single message, every single log file, and the messages within that get sent over to Sumo get tagged with at least these 5 metadata fields. Where the data is coming from, so the collector that the data is coming from, so in this case it would say collector A. The source that data is coming from, in that case it could be Apache Access or it could be Apache Error. The source host, in this case it would be host A. The source name, which is the name of the log file, including the path of where that message came from. And the last one in here, which I've highlighted and bolded, is source category, which could be any category designation that you want. And we use this quite a bit, so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But very quickly, you notice that using any of these metadata fields, you can pin down all the way down to like the host or even the source. When you're searching for data, you can be very specific as to what you want to search. All right, I want to talk a little bit about source category, and you noticed that I've added my source categories here to each one of my sources. And I'm using a convention that goes from broader, in this case web server / Apache / access, versus web server / Apache / error. And the reason I want to do that is because if I choose a naming convention that is robust, it can make my searches a lot easier. For example, if I want to just search my Apache Access files, I can do source category equals WS Apache Access, and it will search across host A and host B for my Apache Access. I could also do WS Apache star, which would search both access and error across host A and host B. Or I could even say, I don't care which brand it is, I want to search all my web server logs for the word error, for example, whatever the case might be. So you notice how using a naming convention that allows you to do broader searches is going to be very beneficial for you as you start building your queries out there. Again, that's something that is covered in detail in this setting up Sumo Logic. We in here are taking advantage of whatever was set up for us in this session. So let's talk a little bit about that second part, which is searching and analyzing. And what I want to do instead is let's ditch the slides, and I'm going to go into the UI itself and start showing you how to do that. So for most of you, if you're getting started, you're probably presented with a screen like this. And this screen allows you to search whatever you want in here. You can notice right off the bat, there are the metadata fields that are available for me. So if I wanted to search, let's say, only my Apache Access data, I could go source category, and it's showing me what are the different source categories available to me. I can choose my Apache Access, and I can choose a specific time range, and we'll talk a lot more about this, but let's say for the last 15 minutes, click on start, and I just very quickly did a search on anything, all my Apache Access data for the last 15 minutes. So here's a very simple way of creating searches. Perhaps I only wanted to search for those that have the word Chrome in them. So I can do something like this. I can say source category equals Apache Access. I could put the word and, or it's actually implicit. If I leave the word and out, it understands that I'm anding this, and I can just search for anything that is Apache Access that has the word Chrome in it, as you see in there. Okay, I'm going to take a step back from the searching. I'm going to come back to this because I'll talk a lot more about the time ranges and this query and what else you can do in here. But what I want to do here for a second is I want to, since most of you are brand spanking new to Sumo Logic, I want to show you that there is a library of out-of-the-box content that you can take advantage of. If I were to go here to my library, I have something called apps. And if I click on apps, I can see all these different apps that have content that is already created for. And what this means is we at Sumo Logic have worked with many, many, many customers that have, let's say, Apache. So we have a pretty good idea what kind of content they want to get there, what kind of queries they want to run. They want to find their 400s. They want to identify robots. They want to look for the top browsers. They want to see the 404 refers. And we've also built quite a few dashboards that they can take advantage of right off the bat. So the cool thing is there's a lot of content here for a lot of common sources that are available for you to start using right away. Palo Alto Networks, Nginx, Trend Micro if you're doing anything with security, VMware. We also have a tab here called Preview, and this is also a whole bunch of apps. These are the ones that we've recently launched. And the only reason why they're in preview is that we still have the box open, if you will. So you're welcome to give us feedback through Sumo Logic community, and we can bake that feedback into the app itself. So here's some RDS metrics for Amazon, CrowdStrike, Salesforce, and so on. So having said that, let me just demonstrate for you one of the ones. I earlier today installed the Apache Access. And again, I haven't created all these queries. All I did is I installed these queries. And the good thing about this is that here are the dashboards that come out of the box. So I can see visitor locations. Here's my Apache visitor locations. Again, I didn't have to create these dashboards. It took my data and started showing me my worldwide hits, just hits within the US, broken by state, broken by country. You see a little visitor access type, so I can see the different platforms that are hitting my Apache Access, the popular mobile devices, top 10 PC and Mac versions. I can see browsers and operating systems. Again, this is all information that exists in those logs, and I'm able to parse those logs and provide all this information to these dashboards, which I can now share with my organization or my team. I can see top documents, top refers, top 10 search terms in popular search engines, media type served, and you get the point. Here's one with web server operations, client location, server errors. I don't have that many errors here, so I have no data displayed in these. Top 5 clients causing some of the errors out there. So you get the point. Out of the box content that you can start taking advantage of right away. But because today I want to show you how to use Sumo Logic, I've just shown you how the cooked turkey, if you will, and today I'm going to show you how to cook that turkey. I'm going to show you how to create these dashboards. The good news is, if you were to install a dashboard like this one, you can always click on any panel on that dashboard, and it's going to take you to the query behind it. So here you go. This is the query that actually built that panel on the dashboard. So the good news for you is that you can always take a dashboard and a query that already exists and go tweak it to your needs. For example, let's say that I want to find my 400s, not just my 500s. All I do is I click on that, I click on Start, and I now have a slightly different dashboard, or a different query, I should say, that is now showing me my 401s, my 404s, my 403s. And if I like this, I can save it, I can update that dashboard that I came from, or I can add it to a brand new dashboard. So a lot more about that. We'll talk a lot more about that, about resaving queries, about the syntax that you see here. And I'm going to teach you right now how to build something like this, for example. All right, so let me close it for now. But I just wanted to show you that there's all this content that is out of the box, so you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. Having said that, today I do want to show you how to start from scratch because I want to make you well versed in Sumo Logic. So like I showed you before, here's my source category equals Apache Access. I can search data for the last 15 minutes. When I look at my results, I see here a histogram that is just giving me amounts. So this is just showing me how many messages were returned per minute on a per minute basis. And the results are down here. So I can see my message. I have about 2,000 pages worth of messages, so quite a lot of information in here. Let's talk about this little dialog box. I can do last 15 minutes, last 60 minutes, last 3 hours, so anything that is here in the dropdown. Or if I wanted, let's say, last 45 minutes, and it's not in here, that's pretty simple. You see this naming, this syntax that they used, 50 minus 15m, which is last 15 minutes. So if I wanted to do 45, I could do that, minus 45 minutes. And this little bubble is telling me exactly what time frame it's going to choose. Right now it's 10:20 for me, so it's going from 10:20 all the way down to 9:36. If I wanted to do 15 minutes of data, but with a 30-minute offset, I can do from minus 45 to minus 30 minutes. So that is 15 minutes worth of data, but with an offset of 15 minutes, as you can, of 30 minutes. And also, if you want to choose different time frames, different dates, I could enter in here a date. I could enter 1/1/2016 or 2017 all the way, or I could go to custom, which provides me a nice little graph, a nice little interface, I should say. And let's say that I want to choose from January 3rd through January 5th, and by default it chooses midnight. But I could change that. Let's say that I only wanted to go to 1 p.m. So I could just choose that here and change this AM to PM, and there you go. Now it's going from January 3rd at midnight all the way to 1 p.m. on 1/15. I can hit apply, and that's ready to roll there. Click on start, and I just requested data for a previous period, for a very specific time period for that data. Okay, so pretty straightforward. I'm going to choose a smaller data set just to keep it simple for us in here. Let's choose the last 60 minutes. All right, so having said that, searching this data is pretty easy. I could have, if I did not use source category, which we highly suggest that you do, I could have done something like this, for example. Give me everything in my environment that has the word error. In that case, yes, it's a query, it's going to return results, but I just went across all my data set. If I have Apache data, Nginx data, Palo Alto Networks data, my custom code, everything. So even though it does bring back results, it's probably not the smartest query, only because you probably want to start narrowing it down when you're searching for things. So whenever you can, which hopefully is about 90 or 95% of the time, make sure you're using your metadata to start searching for your data out there, so that it makes it a lot easier for you to start reducing what kind of information you're looking for. Okay, so let's choose a time frame. Let's see, minus 60 to minus 45. So this is going to give me 15 minutes worth of data, just to show you how that works. Now, the interesting thing that you want to do here is you want to start finding out what's here in your Apache Access info. For example, I can see the URL in here. I can see that this was a 200. This is the size of my Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. This here is the size of my of the message. I could see the refer, and I can see a lot of information. So how did they create? How were we able to create those dashboards out of this information? Well, we parsed that data. We parsed that IP address. We parsed that 200. We parsed that size in there. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways. I'm going to start with a simple one, and then I'm going to show you how to a few other ways that you can do it. Well, for now, I'm going to highlight from the word get all the way to the end in here. And what you notice happens is I get a few choices. One of them is this one's called parse the selected text. This is going to walk me through how to parse my message. So I can say in here, I want to take anything between that word get and the word HTTP. I'm going to extract that value, and that's going to become my URL. Oh, I misspelled it in here. Similarly, I'm going to grab that 200, and I'm going to say that's my status code, because it's 200 here, but it could be a 404 somewhere else. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to say that's going to be my size. And you get the point. What I'm doing is I'm telling it, listen, go find this pattern. And when you find that pattern, you are going to find a few fields in there that I want you to extract. For simplicity purposes, I'm just going to call this user agent for now here. There you go, agent. Okay, so if I now click submit, what happens is it's going to build for me that parse statement. So it's now saying, okay, I'm going to go pull out source category Apache Access, and I'm going to find this. I'm going to go find this this pattern, and when I do, I'm going to parse out a couple of fields for you. And if I click on Start now on that, hopefully it's going to do that for me. And there you go. Look at this. My message is still here on the right-hand side. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you to see. My message is still here on my right-hand side, but it's parsed out those fields for me. There's my user agent. There is my URL. Great thing. Here's my status code, my size. I can see my refer, and then it always automatically parses out that time for me as well. That it does it by default, and I don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, why would I want to parse these fields? Well, as you guys might be aware, I want to start doing some analysis on this stuff. So for example, now I could do something like count by status code. Since status code is already a field, I can easily use that field and say I want to start counting by status codes. And as you'd expect, I have more 200s than anything else, but I'm also a little bit worried because I have quite a bit of 404s. If I was a developer and I just released code, this might be some broken links that I have out there and I want to take a peek at it. Or if I was IT ops, I want to find out what's going on in here. Why am I having so many 500s and 404s? All right, let me take a step back for a second. And let's go back to this parsing that I talked about. So what I just showed you right now is called anchor parsing. The reason for that is because I'm saying, okay, you'll always see this word get. You'll always see this word HTTP. Now go find the stuff that is in between, use those as anchors and go find that stuff. And then use these quotes as anchors and go find that stuff. So I showed you the easy way of parsing. There's other easy ways as well. Let me just show you that. I'm going to be pointing you to documentation quite a bit today, by the way. In here, if I go to parse operators, I have quite a few options. Let me just show them to you. The one that I showed you just now is the anchor one. So how to parse predictable patterns using an anchor. But what if I have not that predictable patterns, or what we call variable patterns? Then I can use something like regex. You guys have seen this before, probably. But regex is saying essentially go find some pattern. Actually, let's take this one. Go find a pattern that says find a digit between 1 and 3 characters. Then you'll find a period. Another 1 and 3 characters. You'll find a period. Another 3 characters. That sounds like an IP address, right? Grab that thing, parse it out, and store it in a field called IP address. As a matter of fact, let's do that. I'm literally going to grab this here, and I'm just going to just paste it into my query. So the cool thing that you'll find here is that you can have multiple parse statements, as you just saw. I can parse this stuff first, and I can parse my IP address afterwards. So let me comment out this last field for now. I'm showing you quite a few things here. The fact that you can do several parsing, the fact that you can comment out fields. And if I click on Start, check it out. I have just now parsed that IP address in addition to parsing my fields as well. So most of you, I would venture to say 99%, if not 100% of you have used parsing, have used regex before, so you can knock yourself silly using regex to parse all your stuff as well, which is pretty easy. Let me go back to that documentation. So I've talked about parsing predictable patterns with anchor using regex. If you're sending us JSON formatted logs, guess what? We know what JSON logs look like, so we have a JSON operator that can automatically parse that stuff for you. If you're sending us key value pairs, for example, name equals Mario, company equals Sumo Logic, we know what a key value pair looks like. We can automatically parse that for you. Same story with CSV files. We know how that looks like. Or if you're sending us some delimited logs with something other than a comma, we can use a split operator to do that as well. We can parse XMLs. And there's a few other options in here, which I won't dive into today, that allow you to do a little bit more with all these different parse operators. But my point to you is parsing becomes one of the main things that you want to do, because as soon as you start searching your data and you get results, you want to start parsing those fields so you can do something with them. All right? Great. So far so good. We know how to parse, we know how to get about doing this stuff. But what if every single time that I run this query, I want to do parse, and my neighbor and teammate also has to do the same parsing statement? You can see how this parsing starts getting a little bit tedious because we're constantly parsing and parsing, parsing, even though it's always the same fields: URL, status code, size, refer, and so on. So one of the things that we suggest is that you create what we call a field extraction rule. As a matter of fact, if I go back to the parse operators, that's one of the things that we say here. For best practices for parse operators, you want to build what we call a field extraction rule. And what that is, as the name suggests, is a rule that it's going to allow you to extract fields, and it's going to do it at time of ingest. So the beauty of that is that I don't have to parse them anymore when I'm running my statement. Let me show you one. I'm going to go to field extraction rules. I have quite a few built in here, but if you didn't have your field extraction rule built, you could just click on add. I can say I'm going to build my Apache access rule, for example. I would specify the scope. So this says which which um, which which messages should I apply this field to? In this case, I'm going to say anything that has a source category of Apache Access, I want you to apply the following parse expression. And here I can knock myself silly writing out all the parsing statements that I want. Or we try to make it simple for you. We know some of the common things, including Apache Access. So I can say, oh, show me the template for Apache Access Logs. There's the template. I can say, yep, that's the template I want to use. So this one is going to parse the IP address, and then it's going to parse the method. It's going to parse the URL. It's going to parse the status code. It's going to do all that for me, and I don't even have to worry about it. If I had some custom fields, I can always add to this one in here. And as simple as that, I can click on add. I won't because I already have one built, and I'm going to show you how that works. So again, notice it just has that parse statement in there. So because there is an Apache Access field extraction rule already in place, check it out. I'm going to go back to that search, and this time I'm going to get rid of the parse statements that we built. And I'm just going to hit enter in here. And I'm going to show you a new area of the project that I hadn't showed you before. This here is the field browser. And if you notice in the field browser, it parses by default. It shows you time and message. It's always going to show you time and message. But it also has all these other fields that are available to me. There's source IP, there's status code, there's URL, there's user agent. Where did these come from? These are the ones that were parsed by that field extraction rule. In addition to source categories, source host, and source name, you remember the other fields that are available to me. So the cool thing about this is I didn't even need to parse. I can just run my query source category because Apache Access, count by status code, and I would get the exact same results. And the reason for that is because status code is already a field that was parsed by my field extraction rule that already existed there. I'm going to show you one more thing about this beautiful field extraction rules, and it is that in addition to being parsed, we also gather a lot of statistics for it. So look at this one, status code. I can show you not only that it's been parsed, but it's already gone through and said, hey, by the way, 72% of your messages have a value of 200, and only, let's see, the 404s, only 4.5% of your messages have a 404 as a status code itself. So it's already pulling up a whole bunch of statistics for me, and it even gives me some drill downs for me to look at. It's showing me in this case what are the top values, what are the top values over time. So you can click on any of these and it will build that stuff for you. So it's giving you easy access to some good stuff in there. All right, so let's continue with this. Let's say that I do want to count my status codes, and what I see is that I have some 404s. I want to find out a trend over time. Did these 2,000 404s happen all at once, or were they evenly distributed across my 15 minutes worth of data that I'm showing in here? So I'm going to introduce you to a new operator. And by the way, there's just no way I can show you all the operators in this hour. So what I'm trying to do is show you the ones that you're going to be using 80 or 90% of the time. Well, this one in particular is called a time slice. And time slice, as the name suggests, allows me to break these 15 minutes into chunks of 1 minute or 5 minutes or 1 hour, whatever I decide in there. But in this case, since I'm only pulling 15 minutes worth of data, I'm going to choose 1 minute. And then I'm going to say, not only do I want to count by status code, I want to also count by time slice. And you notice that I put a underscore in front of it. The reason for that is because any result from an operator, you can call it using an underscore. So in this case, I now see a count of my status codes by of my account by status code and by time slice. So on minute 936 for status code 304, I had 671. This is a little hard to read because if I'm just looking for the status codes 404, I see there's 178 here, and I'd have to scroll down and kind of check it. So I could always add a where clause so that I only focus on status code equals 404, or I could do this as well. I'm going to show you an operator called transpose. Pretty helpful. It's very similar to the pivot table in Excel, and it's going to turn my list here to a table, if you will. And so status code. So with this transpose, what I'm doing right now is I'm switching it so that I can now see my times going down the left side and the status codes over here. So now I can see my 404s are nicely evenly distributed. So it doesn't look like there's a spike necessarily in my 404s. It seems to be that they're evenly distributed along with my 200s. The great thing from here is that it's super easy to go from here, say, to a graph, and I can start easily graphing what my data is starting to look like. And we'll definitely get into more of this. Let's say, for example, that I do want to graph it, but looks like my 200s are really taking over. So I can disable my 200s so I can see this. Oh, looks like my 304s are also taking over, so I'll disable those. And now I can see the distribution of my numbers in here. What I just showed you here is how to disable them in this graph. But if I wanted to not have them here at all, I could always add a where clause. I could say, let's go in here, insert a where clause, and say where status code equals 200 or status code equal what was it, 304. And since I don't want that, I'm going to add a bang in front of it to say I don't want those guys. So now I can run this. It's going to ignore those status codes. It's going to give me this nice little graph, and there you go. It was as simple as that. Let's switch to a bar graph. Now, every one of these graphs has options to them, and unfortunately, I can't get through all of them. But just as an example, let's say that we wanted to highlight our 404s. I'm going to turn this bar chart into a line bar combo chart, and by doing this, I'm going to go into setting. I'm going to say change series, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight those 404s. I'm going to turn the 404 into a line on its own axis so that we can see the relationship of my 404s to my rest of my status codes. So there you go. This is just an example. I'm using Apache Access for status codes, but you could use this exact same template, the time slice, the count, the transpose. This same exact template could be used, let's say, for Windows when you're looking at window events, or you could be for or event codes, I should say. It could be errors in your app code, or it could be messages, particular things that you want to quantify, like codes that you have in your app code. But what I'm showing you here is how to go about and start figuring out things that are, let's say, trends over time. Okay. So let's leave this here for a bit. Later on, I'll show you how to add this to dashboards. I want to show you, with a short time that we have, I'm going to show you a few other things that you can do as well. I'm going to go into my library. I'm going to cheat a little bit and just go into my library and pull up a couple of queries so that I can show you some in here. Let me go into training queries. Let's see if I have a couple. Yeah, let's open this one. And I'm going to go back in there and show you a few others. Let's pull this one here. Okay, so looks like a lot, but let me walk you through them. The first one is geolookup. I have source category equals Apache access, and what I'm doing here is I'm parsing the IP address. I'm saying, let me show you let me show you first what the log file looks like so you can see how I did that little parsing trick in there. I'm saying go to source category, pull that stuff, and you'll notice that you have the IP address at the beginning always followed by 2 dashes. So what I'm saying is find that pattern and grab that first thing and store it as a source IP. That's essentially what I did there, and I parse it. And then I'm using this operator called the lookup operator. Lookup operator is pretty cool. It allows me to look up an IP address and find its latitude and longitude. So let me run it, and while it's running, let's go to that documentation that we were before. Here it is, and let's just look for that operator. Here's the lookup operator. In particular, I'm going to be showing you one called the geo lookup, and this just shows you how to use it. Here's the syntax itself. Here's an example, and it's going to return something like that. So for those of you who are wondering how I built that map, this is exactly how. As a matter of fact, there's additional fields I could have requested. Not only latitude and longitude, I could have requested country code and all those. So let's go do it. I'm going to grab these here. Let's go edit our query. But before I edit it, let me show you the results. So here's what came back. Here's latitude, longitude, and account. All I have to do is then hit this little map icon, and voila. Here is my map showing me hits from different regions. Let's say that I wanted to focus only for regions in North America. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that query, and I'm going to say, listen, give me everything. Give me latitude, longitude, country code, and all that good stuff, and then do a count by all those as well. So there you go. So let's run that. Now my results, I'm going to go back to that table, and you notice that my results show me everything. So what if we just want what is country code US? Yep, you got it. I'm sure you guys are thinking about how to do it. It's pretty easy. All I do is I just add a where clause and say where, what's the field called? Country code equals, and then I specify what I want it to equal, hit enter, and hopefully everything is going to now show me only country code US. I can click on that map, and boom, there you go. Here's my map showing me only the stuff that is for US. And it's as simple as that. And of course, the usual suspect stuff happens. If you zoom in into an area, it starts breaking it into its particular pieces here, as you can imagine, right? So yeah, there you go. It's as simple as that. We'll leave this one running so that we can map it as well. All right, the other one I wanted to show you is this outlier operator. And I know that this is looking kind of crazy because of this parse statement, but remember this parse statement, I can remove it since I already have a field extraction rule. So I'm going to just remove it for now. And instead of having a where clause in here, what I'm going to do is I can just move this up because this field already exists. So I can just say, and status code equals 404. Since it's already been parsed, I can just use it. All right, so this is saying, go grab Apache access. I only want those messages whose status code equals 404. I want a time slice by 1 minute. So for the last 60 minutes that you run it, time slice by 1 minute. And then count the status code and give it a new name. Give that count a new name called server error count by time slice. Let me run this while I talk about it. And then here's the operator I wanted to get to. I want to use this operator called the outlier operator. And what the outlier operator allows me to do is look for outliers, look for the outliers in my count of 404. So let me show you first the graph of how that looks. Here we go. This is how this thing looks. It says, okay, I have some standard deviation, and whenever you happen to be outside of that standard deviation, I'm going to highlight it for you with a little pink triangle. Now I have different options of how wide I want that standard deviation to be. I also have options to how to calculate that standard deviation. For example, right now I have it set up to say go back 5 data points and use those 5 data points to measure what my standard deviation should be now. That's why you notice there's 5 data points missing here, because it took 5 data points for it to start giving me what the standard deviation should be. The threshold is a standard deviation itself. Do I want to do 2 standard deviations? 3 standard deviations, and as you change this, you'll see the number of points that are outside starts changing. Also, do I want to identify consecutive outliers and only notify you when you have 3 consecutive outliers versus notifying you for each and every outlier? And do you want me to find outliers above the threshold and below the threshold, or just below or just above the threshold? So that's what the direction is all about. So these guys here are all just options that are available to my outlier operator that you now see how it can work. So if I were to change this window to 10, it would probably smooth out things. It would make this area a little bit bigger because now I'm saying take into account 10 data points to calculate what the standard deviation should be for that. Okay, so this is pretty cool because instead of setting a static threshold and saying, if I hit a count of 10 404s every minute, alert me, I can use this dynamic threshold to create alerts around that. And we'll talk a lot more about alerts later on, but outlier certainly is something you'll be using quite a bit. All right, there's a couple more things that I want to show you before we switch over to dashboards. The first one is the fact that you can live tail your logs. So far, I've been showing you how to search your logs. We went in here and we started searching through the logs. But for a lot of you, you might want to find out what's going on right there and then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this source category. I'm going to go to live tail and just show you that in here you can live tail by any of your metadata tags. So if I drop that in there, hit enter, I just now started live tailing everything wherever all my Apache Access servers. The cool thing is I didn't even have to jump to each individual server. I can start searching and looking at tail across all my Apache Access servers because I'm looking for source category. So if I'm a developer and I don't even have access to production, here is a fantastic way for me to start tailing a lot of that stuff. And as you can imagine, I can look only for those that have the word 404. I can highlight the word, let's say, Mozilla. I can highlight the 404 itself, and you get the point. I can do some highlighting. I can stop it. I can pause it. I can jump to the bottom so it continues. So all that good stuff that you can do with your tailing, you can do as well. But it gets better. Not only can I do it through the UI, which itself is fantastic, I'm going to go back to help in that documentation because I want to show you that there is there's a CLI for it. There's a command line interface. So if you don't want to do it through the UI, you can download this client. I think the link is here from GitHub. You just download this client, and then you can easily run livetail from your command. And here's some of the cool things that you can do. You can say, all right, run livetail where source category equals Apache Access or whatever you're looking for, and you can pipe that into a grep statement and, take it from there. Output it to a TXT file or whatever you want to do. So you can do a combination of live-tailing commands, taking advantage of source category and all that stuff, and eventually dropping it into your greps and whatever else you want to do. So highly, highly recommended. And we see a lot of developers really taking advantage of this, especially because they don't even have access to production environments to do this kind of diagnosis in the first place. Now, keep in mind, this is meant to complement, not to take over the search. If you're now see something here, you want to start identifying trends over time, we recommend that you then switch over to search, where you can start searching and parsing and doing all the other stuff that you want to do. All right, the last thing I want to show you here is two big buttons that you notice appear down at the bottom. Let me do a search for source category equals. Let's look for some of my security data. Let's take this prod security snort data. Let's say that I want to look at that data for the last 15 minutes. This data is showing me whether I've had some attacks, if I had some information leak, and so on. The hard part about this data is that I don't know what I'm looking for. Yes, I'm looking for attacks, I'm looking for leaks, but I don't know what an intrusion will necessarily look like. If I type the word intrusion, I might find that something, or I might not. I don't know, right? It's kind of hard to know exactly how you're going to be attacked that day or that month. So one of the great things about this tool is that you can take a whole bunch of logs. In this case, it's 66 pages worth of logs. As a matter of fact, it's for this 15 minutes, it's 1,600 results. Not that much, but I just for demonstration purposes, I can take this 600 results and I can hit this button called log reduce. What log reduce is doing on the back end right now is it's looking at all those 1,600 messages, and it's categorizing them into what we call signatures. It's saying, you know, Mario, you have about 488 messages that all look the same. Of course, they have a different date. They might have a different IP address or a different port, but for the most part, they look very similar. So what it's really helping me do is it's sort of helping me weed through the noise and start identifying what are the things that only happen a few times, because those are probably the exceptions. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reverse by the count, and I can see that here I have something that only is happening a few times, attempted user privilege. So this might be something that I want to find out a little bit more about, like someone did a remote command attempt. So I can always click on that link, on that message. It can show me the message itself, and it shows me that it's for this for this category. It shows me that it's for this particular host. And if I want to now, I can dive in. Let's say that for this particular host, I want to now go find out, show me the surrounding messages. Show me a minute before and a minute after for that particular host, so that I can find out who's logged in, who did what right before it and right after. So you start seeing how you can easily start reducing and investigating what you're doing within Sumo. All right. Okay, let me close these now for now. We're running a little bit of out of time, but the last one I'm going to talk about is log compare. Log compare is hand in hand with log reduce, a tool that allows you to run a log reduce now and run a log reduce at a different time. For example, let me just run it right now. What it did is, by default, it uses 24 hours. It ran a log reduce before, and it looked at the signatures 24 hours ago, and it ran a log reduce now, and it's saying, look, this signature here, which today happened 496 times, it seems to be 5% more than it did 24 hours ago. This signature dropped. Now it's 409 times, but it's 1% less than it did before, and you get the point. You can see if there's new signatures. So here's some new attacks that are happening in my environment, for example. These ones weren't happening 24 hours ago, and you get the point. You could also have some that are completely gone. This was a signature that was showing before, and now it's gone. For those of you who are developers and you're pushing out code, this might be a good way to compare what happened before to what happened now. If there was a bug showing up before, and you just pushed out code, ideally you would find this in your logs. That log that was showing you the bug is gone altogether. I showed you the default, which is 24 hours. You can do 7 days, or you can use custom in here and go and choose a different time range, a different time period, if you care for. Okay. Great. So you've seen a bit of the analytics of what you can do with Sumo Logic. What I want to do now is start talking a little bit about, let me jump into dashboarding and what you can do with that. So you notice that we created a few of our dashboards in here, of our queries in here, and all of them have an add to dashboard. The way that dashboards work, and let me see if I can just jump here on the slides to go quickly to this. Here we go. Let's show you this briefly. So the way that dashboards work is they're made out of panels, and each panel behind it has a query to it, right? So I can build queries, and then I can just start easily adding them to dashboards themselves. So I'll show you right now how to do that. Here's a couple of the visualization options that you have available to you. But let me just show you that instead of going through these slides. So let's say that I wanted to put this dashboard here, or this result into a dashboard. All I have to do is click Add to Dashboard. I can give the title, the tile itself, a title. So let's say Apache Access Status Codes. And I can put it in a brand new dashboard by just typing my first dashboard, or I could add it to a dashboard that already exists. But for kicks, we'll add it to a brand new dashboard. It's asking me where do I want to save it. Let's put it in that personal folder. Click on Add, and as you can imagine, it's going to build a new dashboard with one panel to it. While that is loading, let's go add the other panels to it as well. So there you go. Here's my Apache Access um, dashboard with just one panel in it. Let's go and add the other one so I can easily show you how to do it. I'm going to take this geo lookup, click on Add to Dashboard. Let's call it Customer Locations or Visitor Locations. Add it to my first dashboard, click on Add, and I'm going to do the same to that other one, to the outlier. I'm just going to add this one, Add to Dashboard, and let's call it 404 anomalies. Oops, I used the 404 anomalies. All right, and click that, Add. So in that those easy steps, I just added some dashboards in here. You can see that it's super easy to move things around. I can just grab them and move them. Oops, as I say that, it actually shot all the way up. But there you go. You can easily just move stuff around. And you can also add some data panels. You can add some non-data panels. So in here, for example, if you want to add a panel that is just a title, or if you want to put some text, perhaps you want to explain what the data that they're looking at happens to be. You can also toggle the theme. So if you're going to be displaying this in your operations center, you can use this dark theme, and it's going to look a little nicer as you display this in your operations center. You can delete it, star it, refresh it, full screen, and all that good stuff. You can also share this dashboard. So if you want to, if this is information you want to share with others, you can in here. Right now, it's only me who can view it, but you can say anyone in the organization. Here's the link if you just want to send it to someone. There's also some advanced options. If someone does not have access to the Apache data, you can still allow them to view this dashboard with data, but as soon as they try to query the data, they won't be able to because they don't have access to that data itself. So sharing. The last thing I want to show you about dashboards is you can also add filters. So if you're going to be sharing this dashboard and you want others to use it, you can say, for example, in here, perhaps I want to let them enter a country code. That's a filter I want to add, and I can tell them in here a little bit of instructions. Enter desired country code. And perhaps I can specify default value or not. Can click on Save. And now this is something that is available to them. When they come in here, they can enter the country code, let's say UK, and that will make at least the dashboard that this filter applies to get reset to show you what data is hitting from there. There's no data from UK, so I'm just going to get rid of that. But you get the point. It's just an easy way to be able to show people what's to be able to share these dashboards and have folks in your organization use it as a template. All right, the last thing that I'm going to show you here is if I'm done editing, one of the things that I can do is I can set this dashboard to a live mode. Live mode means I want this dashboard to be refreshed constantly. That's like every 1 or 2 seconds. If you don't have it in live mode, then it actually requires you to run it, whether you want to choose a different time frame or you actually hit refresh. But it's just populated with the data since you last run it. When do you use one over the other? I have this little slide here just to show you. Basically, if you're planning on displaying this in a large screen, then that's when you use live mode. Otherwise, use an interactive mode or a non-live mode, which means you're going to use it for exploring data, you're going to use it for historical reporting, operational investigations, or whatever the case might be. All right. So again, I'm going to share these slides with you, but in short, these slides kind of walk you through what I just covered. If you want to edit that dashboard, because I am the owner, I have the ability to edit it. I can click on Edit, and I can go about doing changes to the dashboards itself. I can click on this, change a table, pie chart, and all that good stuff as well as needed. All right, so one of the things that I wanted to cover, I know we're running at a time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about alerts. Alerts become very handy, especially when you want to find, you now know how to find critical events, but you want to start letting people know about it. So I'm going to jump to a somewhat more complex query, only because I think it's a very good option. I have here an example of an alert. Creating alerts is incredibly easy. However, you can create good alerts and you can create not so good alerts. And I'm going to show you what a good alert would look like. So this alert happens to be about 400s? Do I have a big spike in my 400s? And I could do a little, I could just say if I have more than 20 alerts, 20 400s in my minute, alert me. But that would not necessarily be great because if you have a spike in your traffic in general, then you would also have, it's okay to have 400s. So what this thing does, and again, I can get rid of all these guys because I have a parsing rule for it. So I'm going to simplify this here. What this is doing is saying, okay, source category is Apache Access, time slice my data by 1 minute. Now, it's giving me all my status codes, but what I want to do is start qualifying them. If I have a 200, then I want to set a new field. I'm creating a new field, a new variable called successes and one called fails, and it's just going to have a whole bunch of ones and zeros. A 1 for a success, a 0 if it fails, and in this case it's going to be the reverse. Notice that I could have done this like this, but I just wanted to show you that you can also do matches, which is another great operator available to you. So in this case, if status code equals 200, then set it 1 to 0. If status code equals 400, then set it to ones and zeros. And then I'm going to sum all my successes. I'm going to into a new field called success count. I'm going to sum all my fails into a new field called fail count. Why do I care about the successes? The reason for that is because I want to find the ratio between 400s and 200s. I don't just care to look at 400s on their own. I care to see them in the context of all my traffic. So I create a new field called failure rate that is the ratio between my fails and my successes. And let me show you this now while I'm running it. Again, I'm using that outlier operator, remember? So the outlier operator is really doing an outlier on the failure rate itself, on the new field called failure rate. So let's look at this here. Not that interesting. Let's choose a different threshold, and I might have to play with the settings in here. But what this is showing, I don't have that many that much variation, so that's why this is showing me just a straight line. But what this would do in here is, let's choose a threshold of 1, and let's see if there's any better data sets in here. No, there isn't. Apologies, I thought I was going to, let me increase the time. Let's see if I'm just trying to find some anomalies so that I can show you how this would point out that stuff. But my data is so consistent that I don't seem to have that many anomalies. Okay, that's all right. So let's just go back to what I had. Let's click on this, and my data is fairly consistent, so not a lot is changing. So that's okay. But what would happen in here is, if I were to have a pink triangle which denotes a violation, then this failure rate indicator, actually this failure rate violation field in here, would be set to 1. Right now, if you notice, it's all zeros because I don't have violations. So what I could do is I could easily add this where clause and say, all right, good. Add this where clause, and then only let me know, only give me results if my failure rate violation is greater than 0, meaning if it's set to 1. So now, with this query, I can really just catch those cases where I'm having a violation. So I can now create an alert. And the mechanics of creating an alert are super easy. I say save as, I save my query as I want to. Down here at the bottom, I have the ability to schedule the search. So I can do that. I can say run this every hour, run it for the last 60 minutes, run it in this particular time zone. Don't send me a notification every time. Only send it to me if the number of results is greater than 0. Why can I do this? Because if there are no failure rate violations, then I will get no results on this query. But if I do get results on the query, that means that there was a failure rate violation greater than 0. And I can do it as simple as, okay, send it to Mario at Sumo. Or I can do some of these other options, which for those of you who are interested in some of these options, we'll definitely talk about them in the next session, which is called using Sumo Logic. But in short here, just to give you a brief description, this one allows you to run a custom script. So the the alert can trigger a custom script. This one allows us a tight integration with a tool called ServiceNow that allows us to open an incident ticket in ServiceNow. Webhook, as you can imagine, allows us to send a message to a Slack, a PagerDuty, a HipChat, really anything that uses a REST API. And Save to Index allows us to save the results of the query into a small index that you can query at a later time. If you did decide to use the email, you have a few options. You can include the search, the results, a histogram. You could even include the a CSV attachment of the results themselves. And that's how easy you can create alerts in Sumo. Again, creating alerts is easy. What becomes more interesting is, do you create a query that is meaningful so that it really gives you an alert and not just noise? So with that said, I know we're coming to the hour. What I wanted to talk about, all these slides I will share with you as well as the recording. I talked a little bit about installing your apps right at the beginning. We've talked about how to ingest any types of logs. We talked about how to query and analyze them, how to use the operators, how to start charting and putting them into dashboards, also how to put them in critical events, how to alert on critical events. The call to action for you. Most of you are brand new to Sumo, or you're just getting started. Here are definitely 3 things that you can start doing right away. The first one is, work with your administrator. Make sure that they have a robust source category naming convention. If they don't, talk to them about perhaps joining that other webinar that we talked about. If you're the administrator, for sure join it. If not, make sure that they come to this webinar called Setting Up Sumo Logic. That's going to help them build that source category naming convention they need. The second one is, if you're using the same source and everybody in your organization seems to be parsing, think about setting up your field extraction rules so you can start parsing that data and taking advantage of those fields. And the last one, wade through the library itself so that you can see what apps are available so you can start analyzing your data right away. I showed you the Apache app, but there's many, many more apps there that are available to you. So with that said, I'm going to open it up to questions. I think I saw one already, but as I'm responding to that one, feel free to send me any questions. I'm going to stop the recording here for now.